For people who are just tuning in, here's a summary of everything that just went down. So first of all, we've got a document from the NDP and from the Liberals. This is the agreement document that sort of goes over exactly what this agreement is, or what this partnership is trying to achieve. So let's go over that and highlight it and just talk about exactly what is coming. There's some major big ones that we've seen in the press conferences in terms of Pharmacare and dental care, but we've got the document here that lays things out a lot more clearly. So let's dive into that right now. I'm going to zoom in here so it's clear for you. And we have here, the parties agree to prioritize the following actions while continuing to work on other possible shared priorities through the oversight group. So first one, better healthcare system, launching a new dental care program for low-income Canadians. This is the means test. You have to be making under $90,000 annually as a household. This is families, not individuals. So only families that have each of these sort of contributors making $45,000 or under annually, that $90,000 household income, will be able to sort of use this dental care system, and then they say this won't be fully implemented until 2025, which is when the next election would be, or rather when this deal would sort of end. They've sort of said that this is going to last until 2025. Now let's get into it in a little bit more depth. They are talking about continuing progress towards universal national pharmacare by passing a Pharmacare Act by the end of 2023. So not this year, but by the end of next year, by at least December 2023, and then asking the NDA to develop a national formulary of what these essential medicines will be. So Jagmeet Singh isn't even saying that, hey, we're going to have national pharmacare fully by 2023. It could just be specific medications or only for specific Canadians, but he says that this is at least progress in terms of getting closer to that national pharmacare. This is why he's doing this, is saying, hey, maybe this isn't politically the best idea for me, but as of right now, I'm just going to get rid of chat here so you can see it. As of right now, this is the best thing that we can do as a party to get help to Canadians. This is what Jagmeet Singh is saying. So recognizing that health systems have been stretched because of COVID and working with provinces and territories to deliver better health outcomes for Canadians, kind of broad there. And then tabling a Safe Long-Term Care Act. They want to make sure that long-term care is in the public sector instead of the private sector that we saw here over the past decades. Okay, so now they get into making life more affordable for people. This is something that's really important and something that the Conservatives have pressed on, as well as the NDPs, especially with the record high inflation, highest inflation in the past 30 years that we're seeing as of today, rapidly increasing cost of living, cost of real estate. We're going to see if this is included here. So making life more affordable. The Rapid Housing Initiative, we're going to extend that for an additional year. This is sort of like funding from the federal government to build more homes. We also have the Rental Construction Financing Initiative. This is a program that got a lot of flack because, the rentals that were being built often weren't averaging to be actually affordable. They're saying that this is rental construction for affordable units, but it wasn't affordable. It was actually above market rent. So here they're saying we're going to refocus it and make it so that units are under 80% of average market rent. So that's interesting to hear. Making it 20% under average market rent when our average market rents have gone up by more than 20% in the past 3 years. Well, how effective that actually is a whole different discussion. Moving forward on launching a housing accelerator fund, we need to build more supply in order to make it more affordable, right? Supply and demand. Implementing a home buyer's bill of rights. This is something that Trudeau was big on in the last election, and tackling the financialization of the housing market by the end of 2023. These are broad goals. It's tough to see and tough to know exactly what this means, right? We don't know what any of these promises are until we see it in written legislation. So that's what we're going to be looking out for. But again, not until at latest December 2023. But who knows what the world looks like at that point, over a year from now. So this is saying tackling the sort of investor problem and making a home buyer's bill of rights. This could mean changes for the offer process in real estate. For those who don't know, I actually work in the real estate industry, so I have a thorough knowledge of exactly how that all goes. There are some things that are a little bit less than ideal. You can't share what other bids on a house are, so people have to sort of blindly bid up higher. So this could mean more transparency for that whole process, but remains to be seen until we see the legislation. One one-time $500 top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit. Okay, that's interesting. And then also the Early Learning and Childcare Act by the end of 2022, ensuring that childcare agreements have long-term protected funding that prioritizes nonprofit and public spaces. So this is buying into the Liberals' $10 per day childcare, saying that the NDP agree that they're going to support them on this, and saying, hey, we want to make sure that we have long-term protected funding, meaning that even if there is a switch in terms of power long-term, that maybe the Conservatives or the Bloc or whoever takes power, that they can't renege on these promises of this affordable childcare. So we're going to go on here to tackling the climate crisis, advancing measures to achieve reductions of emissions by 2030 compared to 2005 levels, and a net zero by 2050. Moving forward in 2022, creating clean jobs training center to support worker retention, redeployment, and training. This is sort of seen as the answer to all of the folks in Western Canada that work in the oil industry, and saying, okay, hey, we need to transition these folks into jobs that are more future-facing, at least on an environmental level. And also the just transition legislation, so transitioning with feedback from workers' unions, Indigenous peoples, communities, and provinces and territories, more about sort of training, phasing out public financing of fossil fuels, and moving forward on home energy efficiency programs that enhance affordability, so less electricity bills, but also is better for the environment. They're going to frame this as something that makes affordability better, but also is a good environment decision. Here, a better deal for workers. This is something that is going to be fast, ensuring that 10 days of paid sick leave for all federally regulated workers starts as soon as possible in 2022. Liberals had already agreed to this. This was already happening. It's just saying that this is part of the agreement, that it continues to happen. Again, this is only for federally regulated, so even private sector workers, this doesn't apply to them. Introducing legislation by, again, latest December 2023, to prohibit the use of replacement workers, or colloquially referred to as scabs, when a union employer sort of locks out employees. So this is sort of more workers' rights, and definitely a priority of the NDP historically. Let's get into here. Reconciliation. Oh, I zoomed in. Reconciliation, making significant additional investments in Indigenous housing, accelerating the implementation of the pathway to addressing missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and all of the folks that are involved in this, and creating a standing federal, provincial, territorial table on missing, murdered Indigenous women, and providing the necessary support for First Nations who wish to continue to undertake the work of burial searches. So the agreement on that between the two parties. Now we get into a fairer tax system. This is going to be curious to see what Jagmeet Singh has in store for this partnership, right? Because obviously Singh has been sort of pushing very, very hard as of late on creating some sort of wealth tax, as well as excess taxes on excess profits from companies during times like the pandemic. So tax changes on financial institutions that have made strong profits. This is banks, insurance providers, maybe mortgage underwriters, these types of financial industries, and implementing a publicly accessible ownership registry by the end of 2023. Not entirely sure exactly what that is, but maybe we'll find out more. And then making democracy work for people, the changes to voting and things like this. Expanded election day of 3 days, allowing people to vote at any polling place in their district, improving mail-in ballots, and making sure that Quebec's number of seats in the House of Commons remains constant. This is something they've pushed for, even though the population is shrinking in certain areas. They want to keep the same seats there, so there's as much of a Quebecois presence. So very interesting to hear all of that. These are some of the things that they've agreed to, and Jagmeet Singh is saying, hey, we are going to support the Liberals as long as they stick to this plan, and we are going to take a look at the things that they put forward, and if it follows this plan, we're going to support them tacitly, as just in all situations. This is going to come to a head in the April 2023 budget. It should be in April, but of course, Chrystia Freeland and the finance minister and the Liberal government could delay this further, but that remains to be seen. In that April 2023 budget, they outline, for the next year or so, exactly what the government is planning on doing and what funding is going where, what benefits people will be getting. Are there going to be extensions to those? Are there going to be expansions of those? What are they going to do on housing? Where is the money going? This is what's in the budget. And if the budget doesn't include the things that the NDP have outlined in this agreement, well, then we could see a very short-lived partnership here. So super interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of questions around whether this will be actually impactful and helpful for Canadians. Is this sort of partnership going to allow them to pass a whole bunch more in terms of getting help to people on Pharmacare dental care? Or is this going to provide less oversight for the Liberal government, allowing to pass things without proper scrutiny? This is the sort of flip side of the agreement. Obviously, we've got a lot of pressure here on the Liberal government with the rising inflation numbers, though this is a sort of an issue that's going on across the world and isn't directly tied to government decisions, but it is something that the government needs to deal with, right? They sort of pass the buck saying, well, we didn't cause this, so we're not going to do anything. They've got to do something about it. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they are able to be pressed on that anymore, because the Conservatives have less power now because they have like a tacit Liberal majority now with this NDP support. So that's super interesting to see. So that does it for the summary here. I'll likely clip this and throw it onto the channel as a summary, but we're going to continue the stream here. So if you're watching this on the summary video, you can click over to the live stream. It's likely over an hour on the channel, and you can dive into what we're going to take a look at next here, which is the thoughts of Candice Bergeon, the leader of the Conservatives, and likely it's going to be a lot different than what we've heard so far from the Liberals and the NDP.